Dear students, let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 18th August 2016. The first article is related to India's stand on Balochistan. So in this context, what are the challenges India is going to face because of the shift in this particular stand? So the Suhasini Haider, she argues this way. The first is, a hyphenation can develop between Kashmir and Balochistan. Balochistan is altogether a different thing compared to Kashmir because India claims no territorial rights on Balochistan, but Pakistan claims the territorial right over Kashmir. And second issue is Kashmir, India wants to keep it internal and a bilateral issue. And the Shimla Accord says the same. But Pakistan tries to internationalize the Kashmir issue. So by hyphenating the Kashmir and Balochistan, Pakistan can easily internationalize the Kashmir problem. And second thing is, India's track record on Kashmir is much better than Pakistan's track record in POK, Gilgit-Baltistan and in Balochistan. Pakistan has a worse track record of using the Air Force against its own citizens. Added to that, in POK, the demography of the people of the area got changed due to resettlements encouraged by the Pakistani army. But in Indian side, we relatively kept the demography unchanged, and the Gilgit-Baltistan got separated from POK, so and made as a separate province by Pakistan. But in India, we kept the Kashmir boundaries intact till date. So in this scenario, India's protection of the rights on Kashmir, on its Kashmir side, is much better than Pakistan on its side. So in this case, the India's argument may get weakened as the countries see this as an hyphenation. And then India's human rights violations as claimed by Pakistan and Pakistan's violations as claimed by India, that becomes a tit for tat exchange which can obscure the rational thinking. And coming to internationalization of issue. Now, with Balochistan, Iran, Afghanistan shares the boundary, and China-Pakistan economic corridor, it runs through the Balochistan. So in this case, it is not just the Pakistan, Iran, Afghanistan, China, they also have the stakes in stable Balochistan and the presence of a strong state. So in this scenario, the Pakistan's argument that India is escalating the violence in Balochistan can get a credence among these partners. And India's regular stand in the UN is that no other country shall interfere with the internal affairs of another country. That's why it kept itself away from Iraq issue, Syria issue, etc. Now, India involving itself in Balochistan is like entering into the internal affairs of another country, which may weaken its moral stand. So these are the various issues. Now coming to border management between India and Pakistan, you all know that we are fencing our boundaries between India and Pakistan and also on the eastern front. So in this context, recently a committee was appointed by the Ministry of Home Affairs to look into the border management. So in this scenario, let us try to understand the challenges. The western front, even on the eastern front, the border is non-uniform. For example, if you take on the Gujarat side, Punjab side, Kashmir side, the border changes or the terrain changes and also the challenges changes. In Kashmir side, terrorism. On the Punjab side, narcotics. And on the Gujarat side, the problem, especially in the Rajasthan side, the third desert and shifting dunes. And on the Gujarat side, and illegal trafficking. All these are the various problems across the borders. It means the people who are managing the border over here, they need to be differently trained to face these challenges. And second is, there is no legal basis for border management. Now in 1960-61, certain ground rules, border ground rules are prepared. But none of these two countries have accepted the border management rules. So because of this, the BSF, Border Security Force, that manages this, they do not have a concrete legal basis. It means whatever the existing arrangement is, it is ad hoc. And the third thing which we are talking about a strong fence, it is filled with many gaps. It is the reason that the shifting sand dunes and added to that heavy rains, torrential rains, and added to that, if you come to the Kashmir front, the terror elements cutting down this particular border fence, and also the snow in Kashmir eroding this fence. All these things, they are creating vital gaps on this particular fence management. And finally, you have the personal challenges. The BSF people manages these borders. Due to lack of sufficient manpower, a BSF security guard has to guard his post for at least 16 to 18 hours in Rajasthan in the hot summer of 55 degrees. So it means their motivation is going to die down. Added to the pay and service conditions, if you observe, they are not treated on par with civilian police or even with army. So in this context, so keeping up their motivation and providing them with better conditions of living is a major challenge. And India and Pakistan, they have got ceasefire agreement in 2003. But however, this ceasefire agreement is not put in written documentation till date. So that leads to frequent firing or violation of the ceasefire between these two countries, and it is putting the BSF and on the other side the Pakistani Rangers across the border in danger, their lives in danger. So these are all the difficulties with regard to the border management. And coming to judiciary, so we don't need these cases over here. There are cases in UK and USA, but the point is, the first point what he said are, the human relations are built on feelings and emotions, but the judicial judge arguments, these are based on reason and knowledge. That's why many of the judicial pronouncements may not be available or to understand based on the human emotion. And coming to the Uniting the Divided World Order, that is an article by Firoz Gandhi. He wrote it in a bit complex language. Let me say you this way. Now, a liberalism and protectionism in the international trade and in the global order, they always occur in cycles. First was, there is a laissez-faire state. It means it's totally a free market operation. It is based on liberalism. Then slowly we got a welfare state. And then we got, again, neoliberal state. Now we are going towards more and more protectionism now. So laissez-faire state means the state operates with free markets. In a welfare state, the role of the state and restrictions of the state increase over the market. And then in a neoliberal state, again the role of the state is decreasing and market role is increasing. And in a protectionist state, the state tries to prohibit the free trade, tries to raise the barriers for the free trade. So what are the reasons for growth of the protectionism now? Now if you take Brexit and recent arguments in European Union, the growth of right wing, or in the United States the Donald Trump's views, everything indicate the sense of growing protectionism in the world now. So in this context, the first major thing which has paved for this is the international global order and institutions. They are structurally deficient to face the challenges of today. For example, United Nations, that is rigid and it is unable to reflect the today's views. And then that's why it is not in a position to enforce its own mandate. So, inflexible, that is rigid, international institutions, they are unable to provide for a sense of assurance. And the second thing is, the developed societies, they are interested more in their self-serving attitude. Now, the developed societies, they are more shifting towards individualism rather than the social democracy. Now, if you take about Norway, Sweden, France, all these countries, these were initially started as social democracies. But more and more, the individualism with the growth of technology is taking the space. And the America's hegemony on the global world order is getting challenged because of the growth of alternative institutions, growth of China. So the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, all these are the examples for this. Now, with regard to the globalization, the free trade failed to fulfill the social goals. Let me take in WTO arguments. Agricultural discussions, if you take, the West is not ready to reduce the subsidies to its own farmers, but it is demanding the same for the farmers from Eastern countries. So the livelihood concerns of the farmers of developing countries that is not ready to accept. It means the free trade and social goals of development, these are not going hand in hand. So that is the reason why the globalization has got its own challenges and the world started moving towards protectionism. And if you take the EU example, the crisis of the states with open immigration and ideological wars that are persisting on the world, these are the other challenges which has been spoken about in this article. You don't need to read this article because he has given a historical derivation of these points. Westphalian state. So Westphalian state has led to the sovereignty of the states. After that, it talks about the development of League of Nations. After that, United Nations. This is all the historical order, how the institutions, they have become redundant, and agreements, how they became redundant when they failed to reflect the changes of the changing global order. So as of now, if multilateralism has to be promoted, we need to bring in the structural changes. That is what his recommendation is. Now coming to the sedition law again. Now, recently, on Amnesty India, a sedition law under Section 124A of Indian Penal Code was lodged in Karnataka. It is in relation to the human rights issues the Amnesty International was speaking about. So, in this case, what the Section 124A of IPC, if any individual, by use of words, symbols, or signs, or through pictorial representation or visual representation, if he is trying to cause disaffection towards the government, then it is a punishable offense according to the Section 124A. So in this scenario, in Supreme Court in Kedarnath Singh versus State of Bihar case has clearly said that just use of signs and symbols or words is not sufficient for imposition of Section 124A. The use of words, signs or visual representation shall cause a disruption of public order and violence, then only Section 124A has to be used. In spite of this judgment of the Supreme Court, many of the governments, they use this Section 124A without any fear or restrictions. So obviously it is killing the freedoms of the citizens. The Prime Minister Nehru himself described this section as highly objectionable and obnoxious. Now, this colonial provision also been removed in Britain itself, but still India is carrying this colonial provision. So it is the time India has to protect the freedom of speech. For that, the Section 124A need to be repealed from Indian Penal Code. And coming to RTI, Subhash Chandra Agarwal, an RTI activist, he filed with CIC on issues related to the appointment of judges. He wanted to have the documents related to the appointment of judges and what is happening between the Supreme Court appointed collegium and the government of India. So, the Supreme Court has referred this matter to a constitutional bench. Can judicial independence be damaged because of the revolution of these documents? That is what the Supreme Court wants to know. And finally, India-Pakistan. Pakistan has invited India for talks on Kashmir issue. India has replied to it saying that the cross-border terrorism, it is the issue of concern for it and it is ready to talk on the cross-border terrorism. That is what India has replied. These are the articles for today. Thank you very much.